Hey everyone, Ronnie Bincer, the Hangout Helper. We're continuing our series of interviews with chefs that use Hangouts and Hangouts on Air in our Crafty Cooking series. And this particular episode, if you haven't seen the others, check them out. This particular episode, we're going to be talking with Larry Fournillier. And Larry's one of the early guys. I remember meeting him early on doing Hangouts and Hangouts on Air with his cooking show. So Larry, introduce yourself for a moment and let us know a little about what you've been doing with Hangouts and cooking.
Okay, hi everyone. Larry Finelli here, and I'm in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a private chef, do a little private catering, and I've been doing hangouts on air, like Ronnie said, back in the day. My first hangout was on February the 26th, 2012. My first hangout on air, and things have evolved for the better.
Yeah, and
And
go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go. You go. Tell us a little bit about how you've been doing it, and then we'll get. I've got some standard questions we'll cover, but I know you've got a lot of depth of knowledge with the Hangout on Air and cooking stuff. When you were first starting, though,
Yeah, my
um,
my my first show was like I said, 26th of February was a complete fail, in that I didn't know what I was doing. I just sat there and instructed someone how to make curry chicken with
okay,
the help with the help of M Monica, because we had to use her account. Because remember, back in the day it was in beta.
yeah,
Hangouts
very
on Air was in
limited who
beta.
could do the
Yeah,
Hangouts on
so it
Air.
was
Sure.
very limited, and I was out of the United States, so that those were only for USA residents at the time. So, like I said, it has evolved, and it's evolved much to everybody's betterment. I think.
Yeah. Well,
No.
let's talk about some of the standard questions that I've been asking all the
Mm.
chefs. Have you run into technological challenges? I already know the answer, but
Hmm.
everyone needs to hear it. Technological challenges as well as maybe emotional challenges with you
Hmm.
running the show. Well,
Yes, I remember one HOA I was doing with Heather Faye. Everybody know who Heather Faye is. One of G Plus's premier musicians, guitarist, singer, songwriter. And we were doing something in her kitchen. We were making tofu, because she's vegetarian, and we were making tofu curry. Um, and the Hangouts, for some reason, that day, Hangouts on air were failing left and right. Well, lo and behold, that Hangout failed, and we had to reschedule her Hangout for in a couple of weeks. But that was traumatic for me, stressful for me, because here it is, Heather Faye. I'm telling her it's going to be great, and no Hangout.
couldn't make it work. Yeah.
But we did it the next 2 weeks, and everything started to move in a more positive. When I say everything regarding Hangouts, that is. And I remember having you on there, Ronnie. You even cooked for me.
Yeah, well, actually, that brings us to the next question. I know the way you've done your cooking shows for quite a while. You've involved lots of other people in that area
Yeah.
on the bottom, which we call the film strip.
Right.
And so, how have you dealt with problems both technically as well as emotionally with the film strip members?
Well, that's a very good question, because in the early days we didn't have some of the tools that we have now, where we could block, well, not block, but white out. I mean, you know it better than I,
Yeah,
because
we've got cameraman tools and
yeah,
stuff like that, but
cameraman
basically, yeah,
tools.
tools,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So and people were coming into Hangouts. They didn't have that Hangout etiquette, meaning that the first thing you do is put on a
Some
headset,
earbuds or headsets, right?
earbuds, yeah, right,
Yeah.
like what I didn't do today. So those were challenging, and as a host, you had to remind the folks in the film strip. I kept saying lower third, in the film strip, that wear your headset, and keep the noises down to a minimum, because when people were typing, you're hearing clack 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 clack.
Right, right. How
So
about emotionally? Have you ever had people in the show that just sort of freeze up when they realize they're on camera?
uh yes, I would say yes. My first person who did the show for me. I mean, when I say that, she was the first cook on. I was her first time cooking Caribbean food, first time doing Hangout, and I would say five, well, not even 5 minutes, 10 seconds in,
Hmm.
after I did the introduction or whatever, she was just like, they're in the headlights.
What do we do now? Well,
Yeah. So I had to improvise, and it was my job to make her feel comfortable. So that was a lesson learned right there on air. So
so
before we were,
what are your tricks? What are the things you do to help people feel comfortable in the film strip?
well, I tell the cook especially, think of us as friends visiting your kitchen, and we are looking on, and I am just happen to be teaching you how to cook.
Okay.
But everybody here are your friends, and they're commenting on how good a job you're doing. I try to tell my folks who are in the film strip, give some positive reinforcement.
Right. It's like they gathered around you in the kitchen and I said, "You're doing that wrong. You're doing that wrong." No.
Exactly. And even I don't, say no. You're not supposed to do no.
Oh, you're like a teddy bear. I mean, you're very, very, very kind. I remember doing a cooking show with you later, but let's talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about specific though. Next thing about preparing. Like, are there certain types of foods that we're talking about? Crafty cooking here. The idea that you being a chef are getting crafty as well as the brand craft.
Right.
In your cooking shows, what kind of things do you find are best to cook? In other words, do you have any ideas or concepts that people could learn from because cooking really long, slow cooked things aren't necessarily
That's,
best, probably, right?
no, it's like watching paint dry. You know, you want to use food that's gonna give you a sizzle. You know, hear the boil going. See the protein change from one color to the next. So here in Trinidad, we have a lot of different ingredients that we cook with, and there are some things that would take a long time because everything is like slow food. It takes a long time, but it's all natural. But there are things that can lend itself well to cooking Hangouts on air. Again, like when I did the curry chicken, putting in all the spices before, and getting the pot hot, and let the cook smell the aroma as everything starts to come together in the pool.
Yeah.
When they start to marry.
I remember, and I'll bring my experience with you. One of my very first, actually, my first cooking show ever was with you.
Yeah.
and you had me help. You basically gave me recipe ahead of time so that we could go get some of the food, and we actually ran into some issues with not being able to find some ingredients.
Yeah, and that was the main. Well, not the main ingredient, but the ingredient
that Scottish. What is Scottish?
Scotch bonnet.
There it is. Scotch
pepper.
bonnet pepper.
Scotch bonnet pepper. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up. You told us get an habanero pepper, and it hasn't that made an impact on how you prepare people now when you're doing shows with them?
Most definitely. Because what I do now, I would put a substitute when I send them the recipe listing, just as I sent you the recipe listing, but I didn't give a substitute. We had to get in a hangout and I tell you, well, you use this habanero instead of Scotch bonnet. So now I learned from that when I send out my recipes, I would there are ingredients that people may not find, especially in Middle America. So I would put a substitute ingredient that they can use.
Right. So one thing to learn from this is a constant evolving thing, even though it's just you always are looking into how can you improve what you're doing. So one last of the standard questions: are you a proponent of the idea of having food in different stages, let's say raw or pre-cooked, and then maybe halfway and then finished? Is that something you've worked into your stuff?
Yeah, I just started a new series called Food Stories, and my very first one, the gentleman was making a cake, so I told him to show people how to put ingredients together, in the mixer and pour it out into the cake pan, and then put it into the oven and already have a cake baked. And as you open the oven, you pull out the baked cake, and then you can put your, what you call those things?
Frosting.
Frosting, yeah, frosting. I am not the baker in the family. My father is.
Okay. You can plate it, right? That's what you like.
Yeah, I plate. Yes. Yeah. So I am not opposed to that at all. As a matter of fact, that's what has to be done to basically reduce the size of the length of the
length of time for the Hangout. Sure.
Yeah. And,
so,
and I think I'm going that route now because I want to even make my shows even shorter.
Okay.
I don't know how I'm going to do that, but
well, I know that a method that you've been using in the past, I don't know if this will be part of your new format or not, was to have one primary cook that you're guiding and a bunch of other people in the film strip that are all chatting about the different parts of the food or what it looks like and that kind of thing. Is that a standard format you think you're going to be moving forward with, or is that one format and you're going to try some different things?
I might try something different. With food stories, the format on that is I will bring you on. You tell a story about the dish that you're cooking, whether it was taught to you by a grandmother, something you put together for your husband on the first date, before he was your husband or before he was your wife or whatever. I just had a very interesting one with Irmaine Nomer and her mom and Irmaine's daughter. It was 3 generations, and the mother told an African story about the fish and the crab, while Irmaine prepared some plantains, which is a staple in African diets, as it is in the Caribbean. So it was singing involved because the most African stories have singing.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's how people remember it.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. So that's a different format. I remember when we first started, you and I were, or at least I remember myself early on, that we were playing around ahead of time with bringing my laptop down and pointing it to the stove and things like that. How do you help with the challenges of the technology with the other, the cook themselves? We even had to get a special light and put it up above the stove so that the shadow of the light wasn't blocking what you could see inside the stove or inside the pot.
Things have evolved in that now we have USB webcams, so we could put them up over the stove. So we call that stovetop cam or skillet cam, depending on what you're doing.
Sure.
Also, it would be great though if you could get Google Glass incorporated into HOAs, so you'll get a definite point of view. You wouldn't have to be worrying about stringing those cameras up and the lighting that you
just
had to
for the sake of it. We're recording this now. It's January, I think, 3rd, 2014.
You're right.
And I would imagine sometime soon, hopefully, Google Glass for those that have it. And by the way, I'd love to do a cooking show. All you got to do is send me a pair. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I would love to have somebody.
Send me a pair of Google Glass. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can do that now.
Send Ronnie a pair of Google Glass.
Yeah.
So I could tell him how to cook curry chicken.
Okay. So with that said, let's wrap this up shortly. We're going to be doing a live Hangout on Air show with all the different chefs that we've been interviewing here. We've been talking about crafty cooking and bringing the stories of what's been going on with the technology and the emotional challenges. Larry, any other emotional things that have happened, just as a quick wrap-up for you for this particular video, in what you've done either with you or with your guests?
One time the camera fell into the pot. But that fortunately was off air. It was doing one of the tech checks.
Okay, so emotionally that was probably a bit challenging, I would think.
Yeah, because it was like, oh my God, the camera is now part of the
dish.
Part of the dish. But there was nothing in the pot. We were doing a tech check, so it just fell down.
That's a funny one. Okay, well, let's finish this up so that we can keep them to a nice length. And thanks,
Yeah.
Larry, for being part of the interviews, and we look forward to seeing you on the live show.
Thank you, sir.